AskReddit by and data mining. People in the USA who still display a Confederate flag. Why? My friend once went on a date with a dude who had a Confederate flag at his house and she got really offended over it. After the date she asked him why he had that flag. He is British. It was a British flag. I had to throw a guy out of the bar, ask him to leave, because a group of girls were freaking out about how he was being wildly inappropriate. When they pointed out the culprit, I was shocked because the guy was a regular and is downright jovial. I asked him, what the hell did you do, James? He said, I called this girl a cunt and she just started hitting me. Well, James is a Brit and was completely confused. I was like, James, you can't call people a cunt here. They get really upset. James, what's wrong with cunt? I call me own mother a cunt. I say you burned me scrambled eggs, you cunt. I will never forget that line. Came here to see comments from 100 people who do not display a Confederate flag and was not disappointed. I don't, but my neighbor. Okay, that wasn't the question, lol. This is Reddit. No one who flies a Confederate flag is going to answer you here. It's like when people ask stuff like, toxic Karens of Reddit, why are you like this? You're going to get Redditors talking about someone else because nobody is like, oh hey, I'm a toxic Karen and I hang out on AskReddit, it's my time to shine and get shit on by a bunch of Redditors. Knew a guy who was born in Russia but raised in the South. Had a Confederate belt buckle and a Soviet flag tattoo. Either he was trying to piss absolutely everyone off or he was very oblivious. Edit. I don't want to make him out like he was some kind of openly pro-totalitarianism guy. He was pretty chill. Good with animals. Wanted to be a helicopter lineman. But we didn't talk a lot about politics. I'm over here trying to figure out how communist slavery would work. Does everyone get a slave? Do they all take turns being a slave? Maybe he just thought they said Slavs. Edit. To make it clear, this is a joke. I don't a history lesson about slavery in communist countries. I know it happened. My old landlord has a Confederate flag bumper sticker on his truck right above a fuck Trump sticker, which is all the more weird because we lived on Vancouver Island in Canada. Old bikers are weird. The Confederate flag was co-opted by a lot of people as being a rebel against society in general. When I was in middle school I wore a hat with a Confederate flag patch and had a crush on a black girl named Annie. The 80s were a weird time, lol. Now that I'm grown I'm not associated with the flag or the shit that goes with it. My wife's father flew it in front of his house hoping people would see it and leave him alone. Instead it attracted the assholes and crazies to the house. Just a few weeks ago my mom bought a Confederate flag at a flea market for that same reason. She's not keeping it outside, just in her bedroom, but she said if there's a coup or something wacky happens, she hopes those people leave her alone. How else is my souped up Dodge Charger gonna jump that ravine to escape the clutches of Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane? It was about then that them Duke boys knew they were in a heap o' trouble. Up until just a few years ago, like 8 or so, I was one of those people. I defended it, and wholly believed the heritage not hate rhetoric. For me, it was being proud of being a southerner amid the northerners and westerners in the US. I felt that we were looked down upon as backward and ignorant by those others, and it was my statement to them that I was proud of my home. That's what it was to me, from my childhood in South Carolina in the 60s, and all through the controversy about the Confederate flag on the Capitol grounds in Columbia. But eventually I realized that no matter what the flag meant to me, 99.9% of people didn't see it that way. And since the reason for displaying a flag, totem, or other symbol, is to convey some sort of message to other people about yourself or your organization, this was exactly counterproductive to what I had hoped to accomplish. Now whenever I see it displayed, I think what a backward, ignorant, peckerhead, dickweed, or just what a trumper. I've lived in the South for most of my life, There are only two reasons I've seen around here which surprisingly aren't super racist. 1. People in the South are very proud of their Southern heritage and the Confederate flag is the only flag that is uniquely Southern. Or 2. They love when people get upset with them for flying it, so they fly it like an annoying little sibling just because they know it's controversial. I have a Hot Wheels General Lee car and Boss Hogg's car. The General Lee has a flag on the roof. Just like I had a Knight Rider car. I own it because someone gave it to me, probably my mom. No more thought was put onto it than that. In my teens, I used to display the Confederate battle flag. It meant two things to me: the Civil War as a memorable event, and defiance of authority. In my early 20s I learned a lot about the Klan and Jim Crow, about the use of the flag as a symbol of white supremacy, and about the primary cause of the Civil War. 30 years later I still study and think about the Civil War, but now you could not pay me to fly the Confederate battle flag. It's basically become the United States swastika, and is as loathsome to me. I look back on my teen attitude with shame. Thank God I grew up and learned better. See it flown every day and have often worked with people who fly it. It usually falls into the groups, in order of popularity. 1. Family values. Their father flew that flag. Their grandfather flew it, so they are going to fly it. Doesn't mean anything to them other than a birthright. More of a point of Southern pride, the white part being silent. 2. Cliques. Hate can be a part of it, but it's rarely the focus. Just an easy way to feel included in something. The symbolism and history is all but lost, so seeing odd pairings is to be expected. Confederate flag with US flag. Confederate flag with Nazi flags. It's wild. Can be anything from a biker gang, to a militia, to a church group. Seen them all. 3. Oddly enough, the smallest group. Actual Confederate believers. Occasionally self-proclaimed racist. They tend to push separation from the USA as well. Most likely to say things like the South will rise again. The most concerning because they are the most likely to reach for political power. Statues, state constitutions, and changes to what's taught in schools are what they've done. On the outside my neighbor is the stereotypical flag bearer, shaved head white dude, handlebar mustache, works on his muscle cars, goes hunting. He's also the nicest guy to all races of people on our street. He's also in Canada. I finally coughed up enough courage to ask him about his flag in his garage. He said he identifies with the Southern US culture minus the racism and slaves part. Like, can I put up an artsy flag because I respect their effective army and motivational speeches, minus the Holocaust part? There is absolutely nothing funny about the Holocaust. But I seriously laughed at motivational speeches. That was good. I would particularly like to know why people in the North have them. My brother once said something along the lines of the South rising again and I had to remind him he was born in Pittsburgh. Fucking moron. Side note, after the Civil War, some Confederates moved to Brazil and founded a village called Santa Barbara de Oeste. If you go down there, the Confederate flag is everywhere much like we do here in America. They do reenactments, have memorials, and still preach some of the beliefs of the Confederacy. I grew up in the South and saw the Confederate flag quite often, and a lot of people display it as a symbol of the South more than anything because of decades of revisionist history. It was funny to meet the nicest, most welcoming people in the world and then see a rebel flag in their backyard. Yeah, I lived in the American South for roughly 30 years. 1. I do think there is often a wink and nod to racism involved. 2. It's worth noting Southern pride is still relevant in the modern context. The American South is often isolated by the rest of the country. For example, it's held up as some sort of beacon of racism, when the most segregated cities in the country and the ones with the most racial unrest are Midwestern cities. The way the rest of the country looks down on the South tends to inspire people to counterbalance with Southern pride. The Confederate flag is an easy way to represent this. I used to have this question when I was younger. I was all it's a history of hate, tradition of traitors. But then I actually talked to people who were brought up in the South. Those people were raised on the idea that it was a symbol of the little guy standing up to the big guy. For them it was about taking on overwhelming forces to preserve their freedom. The ones I talked to understood the irony about freedom but expressed that it's just a feeling because it was pounded in their heads that the Confederates stand up against Gov telling them what to do. A TV show in the 80s called The Dukes of Hazzard exemplified this idea. It was about two farm boys that would thwart the corrupt Gov police with their bootlegging adventures. These people weren't raised to say slavery is good, hooray slavery. They were raised to stand up against Gov tyranny, to stand up in the face of overwhelming odds even if defeat is likely. While I don't agree with how they were raised, and I fully understand why they dig their heels in when outsiders cone and say get rid of your flag, it's disgusting. They were raised to stand against others telling them what to do. Some people see it as a symbol of racism and slavery. Others see it as a symbol of Southern pride and heritage. Still others see it as a way to symbolize Southern pride and heritage while trying to hide the fact they are racists. Those seem to be the big three. What's even funnier is that the Confs never recognized that flag a national flag. It's a recreation of a battle flag, which was originally square-shaped. That's why it became accepted in the 1890s after Reconstruction. The Daughters of the Confederacy raised it as a tribute to fallen soldiers who were their fathers, brothers, husbands. They didn't fly the flag of the Confederacy as a rebellion, but instead they flew the military flag we all know today as a remembrance of their fallen relatives who were largely conscripted. The Dixie Democrats proposed this flag in the 1940s to be a symbol of Jim Crow and segregation. That's when it started to become something other than a memorial piece. TLDR, unless you're remembering a fallen relative, you're probably flying the flag for the wrong reason. Legit answer here. I couldn't care less about anything related to the Confederate flag. However, it is everywhere in my part of the country. The people that I know who still display the flag don't think of it as a symbol of hate. It's got a kind of don't tread on me feel. A remembrance of old times, not about slavery specifically. Hope that helps. I'm literally related to General Lee and don't fly a flag. Nobody in our family does. We have crazy old flags and other memorable items, but they are all locked up. For the same reason I had an anarchy flag on my wall when I was 15, an immature desire to show rebellion against a perceived government oppressor. The difference is that most moody teenagers grow up. I don't fly the flag, but I am from the South and grew up in a conservative area, so I understand the perspective. Many people in the South are extremely distrustful of government in general, particularly the federal government. For them, the Confederate flag is a symbol of rebellion and defiance towards the government. It's a veiled threat. If you push us far enough, we'll leave again, and this time you won't win. In my experience, slavery and racism have very little to do with why people fly the Confederate flag. Doesn't mean it's right though. I also grew up and still live in the deep South. I've always said the same thing about the flag. The people that fly it usually aren't doing it for racist reasons. But at the same time, you get around a campfire with them and have a few beers, and suddenly they start throwing the N-word around like it's nothing. Like some people don't even consider it derogatory when they say it. I was watching a football game a few weeks ago when we went to visit my friend's farm in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi, and it blew my mind at the amount of times people would say something like, "Man, that 10 sure got some moves," or talking about how fast they are, or just generally good at the sport. Blows my mind how people can talk a person up and at the same time refer to them like that. I work in healthcare and live in a southern state. I serve a large rural population that deaf holds to its roots. I'm also a biracial, black, female who's not entirely white passing. I'm pretty racially ambiguous appearing. I say all this BC this may impact the response I've received. I've seen mostly older men with the flags, To start, I have cared for many papaws displaying the flag in some form or fashion. Shirts, wallets, they talk about the flag on their truck. Wives fam bringing their Conft flag blanket for PT to cozy up while in the hospital. For the papaws I've asked, it's really a symbol of pride, being proud to rise from a space of struggle, building a life and way of living that wasn't easy to flourish in. It's symbolic of their family unity in succeeding generational struggles. Many papaws I've talked to don't immediately recognize the obvious racial, slavery, implications of the flag. Although, some admit that it's about pride of heritage and all that, and part of that pride includes feeling better. I've heard the words used of smarter, more hardworking, for example, or more superior than all else, whatever all else means. Some of the younger gentlemen I've interacted with, however, seem to be more vocal about wanting to reinforce a racial hierarchy. I'd say the other half of younger dudes say they just like it. Edit. Clarity. When I was like 13 I wanted a Confederate flag belt buckle. My mom said no. Why did I want it? Lack of education and kids on the football team wore them. I'd say that's probably the reason why most people fly them today. Lack of education.